Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Where we're committed today to bringing the Lordship of Jesus Christ to every aspect of our lives. And we're talking about an important topic today, the whole idea of how in the world do we bring unity in our culture? How do we help change people's mindsets?
Yeah.
And how do we win people over to the wonderful life of Jesus and knowing Him and being a part of His family?
Yeah, it was interesting. I came across, last week we did a study on Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I was kind of browsing on James Clear's website, and I came across this article.
Let me just comment there.
Yeah.
A lot of you have responded that was very helpful to you. I've had comments, people taking notes and writing down, principles, and that just warms our heart because we want these to be helpful to you, and your feedback is very, very important. Just to keep us on track. Yeah, keep it coming. But like you said, when people ask me, hey, what are you reading, and how do you determine what you're reading? A lot of times you strike a vein of gold, you hit a gold mine, and you keep pursuing the gold. And so that's what you did this week because, we've enjoyed that book.
Yeah, I was looking for other references, and I came across this one article, and, I thought this is super appropriate for our current season of life and our era in our nation today, in which we're striped with all kind of division. Like division defines our nation today.
Yeah.
And the title for this article I read is "Why Facts Don't Change Our Minds." That in the midst of our reality that we see, there's something more is in play besides facts that shapes our opinion. Right.
Now, this is frustrating to us on the surface because you and I have probably, we're both thinkers, we're worldview people. We like to engage in the battle of ideas.
Yeah.
And yet sometimes, and maybe you can relate to this, you've shared the gospel with somebody, you've given, logical, airtight arguments as to if this is true, then this must be true, and this must be true. Therefore, right, you come to the conclusion, therefore, give your life to Jesus Christ. And sometimes in the face of perfect arguments, perfect logic, stuff that makes total sense, you find people that are not necessarily biting.
Yeah, and I'm talking about arguments or debates involving smaller issues than just the gospel, like even basic day-to-day issues, like I saw you punch that kid. No, I didn't. I'm talking about alternative school days, in which the fact is plain as day, but there's a disconnect there.
Or we just came off of two political conventions.
Yeah.
Where both parties are laying out a vision for America, and you couldn't look at two more diametrically opposed explanations as to what's going on and what's the solution.
Two ways to view reality. It's like it's so drastically different. Like
it's like parallel universes.
I know we're living in different reality, but there's only one set of facts. So how do you explain that?
Yeah, as Christians, obviously we believe in truth, right? And truth does not mean your truth, my truth. Truth is truth. It's objective.
It's not based on your perception,
or your feelings or anything
experience
else
or whatever. Yeah,
and yet it's like we're living in a world of, like we said, parallel universes where the facts almost don't matter.
Yeah, and you got these highly intelligent, highly educated people who, from my opinion, they might say the same thing about me, but in my opinion, are believing these things are totally non-factual or contradicting. And I don't understand why until I read this article and gave me a glimpse of why that's the case.
So he makes the point, that I'm quoting him here, humans need a reasonably accurate view of the world in order to survive. Yeah. From a Christian worldview standpoint, we would say that, the world needs to make sense. You cannot live in a meaningless world. And all of these, of course, he doesn't go there, but I'd like to, if I was sitting down interviewing him, I would like to push him towards why that's the case, and of course, we believe it's because God made the world and our lives correspond to truth, and we live in a world that makes sense. We live in a world that's governed by law. Right. We live in a world that's governed by truths. And so human beings need to have a worldview. In fact, if you have a worldview that does not fit reality, you're going to be a very, sick person. You're not going to be able to function within that world. So we're looking for order. We're looking for meaning. The world needs to make sense to us. Right. And yet at the same time, he said, that's not always the overriding factor. Right. In other words, facts and all of that don't necessarily, it's not the lead foot.
Right.
And
accuracy in reality is important to a certain degree, but he's saying sometimes something else is much more important.
And what is that something else?
And this is the interesting part. The something else is the need to belong.
Wow. So people will actually, if they fit, if they found a group of people that love them, those people can believe the most bizarre, factually inaccurate worldview.
Right.
But that need for us as human beings to find our place, to find our tribe, is so powerful that you'll actually be willing to believe a lie.
Yeah.
Or the lie becomes so powerful in the midst of that tribe that it becomes factual to you.
Yeah, perpetuated enough that it just becomes your reality. That need to fit in. In high school, we call it peer pressure.
Yeah.
Well, peer pressure doesn't go away after high school. It actually, in many ways, increases.
Well, and how many times do we say, even in high school, we categorize people? You got the jocks, you got the cheerleaders, you got the brainiacs, you got the thespians, you got the band members. I mean, basically, all those were symbols of belonging. That was the group that you felt the most comfortable with.
Sure.
And you dressed alike, you talked in your same little language, but that was a powerful bonding moment. And really, people were looking in that culture for, like, where do I fit? And people still do. Like you said, just because you're a teenager doesn't mean, or you're now a corporate executive doesn't mean that you lost the need to belong.
Yeah, and I feel like that need to belong, and which on the flip side of the coin is our aversion from criticism, our aversion from being kicked out of the tribe, whatever you want to call it, is accentuated, is supercharged in our era of social media. Right.
So what you're telling me is, if I get all fired up, or you get all fired up, and we get on our Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and we lay out this fact that exposes, this is funny. This is polarizing right now. We can talk about masks, the science for masks, the science against masks. Why are we wearing masks? Everybody's polarized about that. So we get online and we shoot out our latest data on why masks are stupid. That's not going to change any minds for the most part. And why?
Yeah, because people have already made up their minds, and because these opinions aren't necessarily based on fact. They're based on their environment and based on their social media tribe and their social media circles. We talk about the phenomenon of likes, the idea of people who likes it or comments and say, hey, you're so smart for doing that. You're so, whatever for doing this. That creates that affirmation to say the right things, to say the thing that conforms to that tribe, So these needs are supercharged, accentuated in a powerful way through our social media, in a way that we never really experienced before in the history of mankind.
And as we've said, sometimes the social media platform, what we're doing is when we say something, we gather people that agree with us. We're not really changing minds, but we're just simply becoming a lightning rod for people that go, I like what Andrew, I agree with what Andrew says. But when it comes to growing the gospel, spreading the gospel, creating followers of Jesus Christ, people who love him and follow him, we've really got to start going after people's hearts a little bit better, as opposed to just their heads. It's not an either or thing. It's both and. But sometimes we accentuate maybe the one to the demise of the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you throw in the mix of this the grenade of the cancel culture. That makes things so much more complicated too, right? So not only do you want the affirmation and belong, on the flip side is you get canceled altogether. They shut you down altogether. So that's why in our nation you see this great division of people who believe in same nation. You might even be neighbors, and you believe like completely different things because your differences are accentuated so much more because of this crazy culture we're in.
Well, and that cancel culture, as Andrew was pointing out, just for those of you that might not be familiar with the term, it's this whole thing today that, if you say something, or even if you like something, like recently with the pastor of a mega church who just liked somebody's tweet, and somebody said, oh, you like this person, and they demonized that person, and then this person that liked it ended up getting canceled. In other words, you lose your job, you get fired, you don't get promoted, you're no longer on the in crowd. And so what's happening in America today, there's really a silent majority of people who maybe disagree, but because that culture is being so amplified through the mainstream media, through corporate America, even through professional sports now, if you differ, boy, the full weight of that group comes down on you. And what it's going after is our desire to belong, to fit in.
Right.
And the cancel culture, as you said, is the epitome of you disagree, bam, we're going to make you pay.
But this is the interesting part is, again, perception with reality, right? And what social media does, in my opinion, is it presents a picture of what reality may look like, even though that might not be the case. You may post something that 80% of America agrees in and says that's reasonable, that makes sense.
Yep.
But on social media, okay, the 20% who hates what you think are the one who chimes in and comments and give you the dislikes or threatens you or whatever, threatens to cancel you. You feel like you're alone, even though that's not necessarily the case. Again.
And then we have the mainstream media who, again, are ideologically along a certain spectrum that isn't necessarily mainstream America.
Right.
And so, as you said, the power brokers, the people who have the largest megaphone, sometimes distort the accuracy of the picture. But nevertheless, it's a powerful weapon.
It's a powerful weapon, and I think we just need to understand how this works. We need to understand why most people will just cave into whatever the popular belief is, even though 3 days ago they totally disagree with it, but then everyone's agreed. They're like, I guess I agree too. They actually did a scientific study that shows that, in the face of falsehood, if everyone else believes it, the more people who believe in that, the more likely the person under the study will actually cave into that.
And the idea behind that being that the drive to fit, to be connected, to belong is so powerful that we'll even believe irrational things.
Right.
Or in that one study you're referring to, it was clear that, I think it was like, which one's the longest line?
Are these two lines the same length? And they're like, obviously not.
Yeah, like it was a clear discrepancy. Like there's no way that's the same the same length. And yet they caved in because everybody else in the study was told to say that they were.
Yeah, they hire actors who were told to say these two things are the same when they're not. And the more people they hire as actors, the more likelihood for you to change your mind and say, I gotta go along with everyone else.
So I guess, bottom line is that in this day of cultural opposite polarization, where we're constantly fighting over everything. We seem so polarized that maybe we need to start going after people's desires to belong and getting to know people. There's that great quote by Abraham Lincoln about, he basically said, I don't like this guy, therefore I must need to get to know him better.
Right.
And people that are truth-based people, prophetic people, were like, no, you need to just listen to what I'm saying. But the pastoral part of that says, no. If there's somebody that you really don't like or don't like what they stand for, maybe we need to go out of our way to really get to know them better.
Well, I want to read this part, but before we get there, I think the idea what we're talking about is not compromise. I'm not saying, hey, we should just go along with the flow. I'm not saying that. Even prophetically, the scripture teaches many times we have to go against the flow because our ultimate belonging is with God.
Right.
And he's our ultimate tribe. Allegiance is to him and not to the world. So we can get into all that. But I think it's good for us to understand that about human nature. And just in general, most people go along with that. And that dictates your nature, your family. But I want to read this one part. It's very interesting. He says, convincing someone to change their mind is really the process of convincing them to change their tribe.
Yeah,
Think about that for a second. And ultimately, that's what we are. Like, do we just want to get on a debate and break down somebody, or do we truly want to win them for the Lord? As Christians, we're not really called to just win, right? We're called to not just win the argument, it's to win the person, right?
Yes.
It's to love people as Christ would love them.
And we've all found the case before too. If someone doesn't like you or somebody's coming at your worldview, it's very threatening.
Yeah.
When someone's sharing the gospel with you, and if that means, Andrew, what you've currently believed or how you've lived all these years has been wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's really scary.
Yeah.
Because what that says is, if what I believed is wrong, then what my friends believe is wrong. And my sense of belonging or my sense of tribe, the tribe I belong to, it means there's going to have to be a change of allegiance. And sometimes that's scary because it's like if you've gone this way your whole life and now you're finding out this isn't true, then where do I land?
Yeah.
And where do I fit? And where do I belong? And what does that even look like? And that's really scary for people.
It says right here, nobody wants their worldview torn apart if loneliness is the outcome. So now you're associating not just changing your mind, but changing your mind to loneliness, to being abandoned, to being an outcast.
Wow.
Now these are all things that maybe no one's like actively thinking about that while they're losing a debate. Like, I'm going to be lonely, I'm going to be outcast. They're not actively thinking that, but that's in the back of their heart and the motivation. I think we need to understand that while we're having these discussions with people, is that you're not just maybe attacking their argument, even though you're not meaning to, you're really attacking maybe their identity and their sense of belonging. Yeah, and that's huge.
I agree with you. Sometimes it's not conscious, but sometimes it is. I mean, I know people that, when you talk about, hey, surrender your life to Christ, follow Him. Yeah. Then they connect the dots and they read their Bible and they realize, you know what? If I follow Jesus, then I can't be following my friends, because what they're involved in, I can't live that way any longer. There has to be a change, and I think for many people that is the cost. I remember when I was in high school. I had a radical encounter with Jesus my sophomore year. I mean, I realized I was a Christian, but I was powerless. I really wasn't living the gospel. I wasn't impacting any of my friends for Christ. And I remember when I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, I realized, you know what? I said this to the Lord. I said, Lord, if you are my only friend, then you're worth it. And it was a real dividing line. But I remember feeling that, I'm no longer going with the crowd, with my old tribe, that if I'm going to follow Jesus, it might give that feeling like I'm going alone. Right. And for a season it was that. But I think having the Lord versus the tribe, if He was my new tribe, then I had to come to the place where I said He's worth it. Yeah. I think people, that is the tension point it's this constant dance between truth and belonging. And what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. There are times in which, to pursue the truth, we are going to have to forsake our tribe, our old tribe, what we're used to, and there might be a time of pursuing loneliness. Now, I think in general, in nature, no one wants to pursue loneliness, but God. You look at the Scripture over and over again. Men of God and women of God have been called to go on journeys of loneliness, abandoning their tribe. Look at Moses. Look at Joseph, losing their tribe to have a time of intimacy with God. But eventually, it is restored, and they have a new tribe.
And we love to say this: you never give up anything for the gospel. The denial of yourself never results in less. Yeah. It always results in more. It's an invitation to more. But that initial feeling of forsaking all to follow Christ, and facing loneliness and the prospect of loneliness, I think is part of the embracing of the cross and the following the Lord that we have to be willing to do. The fruit of that is always more. Right. More relationships, more friendships, more of Jesus, more intimacy, greater life together. Right. It's not a call to loneliness. Right. But initially, at least sometimes it's portrayed that way. Absolutely. You gave some good examples of, Abraham, where the Lord said, leave your family, forsake your family, follow me to a place that I'm going to show you. He didn't know any of that. Right. It was the ultimate truth and encounter with God over peer pressure and belonging. This was another example that I came to. It's with Jesus in Luke chapter, I believe it's chapter 20. It says, one day as Jesus was teaching the people and preaching the good news in the temple, the leading priests and the teachers of the law and the elders, so that was their whole tribe, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That tribe of belongingness came to Jesus and they said, by what authority are you doing these things? And they said, who gave you this right? And I love this because, and this is a good principle for us. I was reading, when you look in the Gospels at how Jesus conducted his business, I believe there were only 2 times that this author was saying where Jesus answered a question. The rest of the time, and I think it was hundreds of times, Jesus asked questions. What a great strategy. Yeah. So instead of being confrontational and telling you, I'm going to ask you instead, and I'm going to draw you in through relationship into life change. So that's what Jesus did here. He said, let me ask you a question first. Did John's authority to baptize come from heaven, or was it merely human? Now this is a simple question, right? Mm-hmm. A or B? Right. But that's not what was happening because of this principle that we're talking about of belonging. What were the Pharisees doing at that point? Right. They're counting. They're doing a mental calculus based on, okay, if we say this, then this is going to happen. If we say this is going to happen. I mean, they were totally, placing their bets based totally on relationship.
They were sending out their public relation press to go out there and do a quick survey, see which way is the wind blowing today.
What's going to cost us the most?
Quick Twitter survey. Do you guys want A or you guys want B? You want pepperoni pizza or sausage?
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people run their business today is through whatever the wins of social media or impressions or whatever. And that's what the Pharisees were doing.
Yeah. And so they got together. They say, "Hey, Andrew, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And I don't know, Pastor Ron, what do you think? Well, if we
can't
do
offend this crowd, we're going to offend this crowd. If we say this, we'll offend these guys.
So they basically turned to Jesus, who asked them a simple question, and he said, "We don't know."
Right.
And then Jesus said, "Well, then I don't know either."
I'm not going to tell you that.
I'm not going to tell you. But again, it just shows you how fallen, sinful human nature operates.
Yeah.
And I love what you were sharing even about some neighbors, around you that maybe you differ on certain things, maybe politically or socially, your ideas about things.
Sure.
But all of a sudden, there's a baby coming. Now there's fatherhood coming. Mm-hmm. And now you're going, hey, there's a bridge here where I can use that. So that's just an example of our neighbors. But talk about that for a little bit, on the belief spectrum, from people who might share your beliefs perfectly being a 10, people who don't share your beliefs at all being like a 0 or a 1. How do we bridge that gap, and where should we be spending maybe our most of our time?
Yeah, and something you said here I thought was very helpful is the spectrum of belief. So if you break down your belief from a scale to 1 to 10, so say if I'm on 7 on the spectrum, he says it's really hard for me to convince someone who's like a 0 or the 1 on the spectrum. He said the best people for me to influence are those who are on a 6 or 8 on the spectrum.
Sure.
Who are really close to me.
They're closer. In other words, you have more in common than you have not in common.
And they share some study that showed that, the people who are most going to listen to you are those people who are really agree with 98% of the things that you believe in. It makes sense, right? Like, here's my pastor. He and I agree on most things already. When he shares a new idea, there's much more chance for me to hear him out, to say, hey, well, that's an interesting idea. Let me do a little study. Let me be open-minded about that. Than someone who I knew just don't like me, hate my ideals, hate my worldview, and then he gives me a new book. I was like, I'm not going to read that.
Yeah. Or you've got nothing in common with them. So I guess the point being, so I'll ask you a question. So why would you trust me if I throw out a new idea that initially you go, wow, never heard about that before. Yeah. I never looked at it that way before. Or that challenges one of my beliefs. Right. Why are you more open with me?
Well, because you have credibility, because of all the things we agree with, because I know you care about me, because there's history of you being successful, what you said is being successful in my life.
So there's a sense of you already trust me because of the relationship that we have. You know that I'm for you. In fact, that was one of the points he brings out in the book. Talk about that whole principle of kind and the root word, because that's really what we're the whole idea of a tribe and kinship.
Yeah, you talk kind. The word kind from kin, which is family. So being kind is basically treating them as if they're your family. So when you're in the family of them, if you're in family together, now there's credibility. Now we can lower my guard, lower my shield, and actually be receptive to new ideas. I mean, you guys all been in debates with people in which there's no winning this, because even if you win, you lose because the shields are up, the fences are up, and I mean nothing you say can penetrate. There's no learning going on there. Exactly. They're just the fences, right?
I know when I ran for office, we'd have occasionally there'd be a debate, and what always cracked me up about the debates was the only people that would show up for me were my ardent supporters. Yeah. And the only people that showed up for my opponents were their ardent supporters. Yeah. My mom was on this side, his mom was on that side. And so at the end of the night, it was really an exercise in futility because we already had the camps. Right. Nobody was changing. And, we were attacking each other on the basis of ideas. So I wasn't going to change your ideas or you're going to change my ideas. And really, we weren't going to change the audience's ideas because they already knew what they believed in. I had no relationship with their camp. And this candidate had no relationship with my camp. Right. So nothing was really happening there of significance because of belonging and lack of relationship and all those kinds of things.
Sure. And again, this is what happens when you emphasize on the differences. And what I've learned is, most people in our neighbors, it doesn't matter, overtly, again, sometimes, we emphasize on the big hot topic issues. But if you talk about day-to-day issues,
right,
we're mostly the same.
People basically want the same thing.
Want the same thing. We all want to have stable jobs. We want to love our kids. We want our kids to be successful. We want us to be healthy. We want us to be successful, and we want safety and all those different things. In general, we want the same things. But our culture is so focusing on so much on these explosive, divisive issues that's the first thing we jump to. And next, you know, walls are barriers up, and you can't have a conversation anymore.
So looking for the common ground, looking for the thing. You know, I remember. One of the things that I've said, you know, and preached before is that every single human being, no matter where in the world you live, we all have one common desire, and at base level, and that's the desire to be happy.
Absolutely.
And so find those things that bring us happiness, and let that be, you know, whether it's our kids, our jobs, you know, like you said, safety, prosperity, a nice house, you know, whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Find those common areas. Use that as a launch pad for building a relationship.
Absolutely. You build those commonality. You show that you care about people. You share that, hey, I'm a normal person. I'm not weirdo. I'm not like some weird cultist or whatever. You know, we care about our kids like everyone else. And then there's common things we can talk about. And then we build off of that. And there's understanding, and there's open-mindedness, and there's growth. He said, we don't jump from the scale from 0 to 10. We slide down the scale one at a time, you know, and sometimes we got to allow people to have the room to go up or down the scales instead of saying, well, you're not where I'm at, so see you later.
Right.
No, let's focus on the commonalities.
Right. And we're gonna, you know, we're actually gonna do 2 episodes on this particular topic today, because what we want to do is really transition next week into giving you a couple very practical ways you help slide people along in this journey of life simply by loving them, but very practical ways on how we do that. But let's get practical for Living Stones, because I'm really excited. I want you to give everybody a little bit of, you know, we've been in this series called Supernatural Provision. Yeah. And I've heard so much good feedback on that. And this coming Sunday, we're going to wrap it up, but you're the one wrapping it up. And we're doing this intentionally because we've got something we're getting ready to launch in the church that's very, very important as it relates to belonging. And I want you to talk to, maybe give us a little insight to what direction you're going on Sunday and why it's important.
Yeah, and you know, every fall at Living Stones Church, we launch our life group semester. Yep. And we make a big deal of it, and it is a big deal because our life group really is our pastoral, our connection, our community unit.
It's our belonging
unit. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we acknowledge on Sunday morning, you know, we get together and worship together. It looks great. But to get to the level of community and intimacy we want between our friends and so forth, we need another gathering place. Yeah. And that's what the life groups, the purpose of the life group is. And this week I want to talk about the supernatural provision of God is given to us through our community. Right. You know, a lot of times we focus on what we don't see instead of looking for the resource that's already around us. And God uses the people who are already around us to bless us, to encourage us, to lead us, to help us grow. And we just need to have the eyes to see that.
Well, let's get real practical here, you know, because we got a lot of wonderful ministries that build community. But let's say you just came to know the Lord, and you used to spend your Friday nights out drinking, partying, sleeping around, doing drugs, whatever it is that you used to do. And now you get saved, and you come to know Christ, and you realize, you know what, if I'm going to grow in my walk with God, my Friday night routine is going to have to change.
I need a new tribe.
I need a new tribe, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's like, what do I do now? Right. Well, the good news is there's lots to do now. And there's a lot of people that are running after the Lord and really wanting to live a life that's meaningful and a life that's free and a life that's fun. But like you said, who's my tribe? And that's really our life groups are about finding your tribe.
And we want to be intentional about that. We don't want to hide this. Like, you know, we just throw people the message, the gospel. Yeah, that the gospel message is powerful, but how about inviting them into a community along with that and to help them grow? Because the message is not just the gospel, it's discipleship. And discipleship, we can talk about this before, discipleship requires a community. It requires people
doing life together.
Absolutely. Jesus created a community. He lived with his disciples. They went everywhere together.
And here's what this podcast is saying. Our community is better than the world's community. Our community and what we believe in and the way we live is going to produce better fruit in your life, more satisfaction, more joy, more freedom, more life to the fullest. I mean, that's the promise that Jesus gives as the truth. And so this is where truth and belonging come together. is in the body of Christ, where you gather around what is true and what Jesus says is true, and then you find great community and belonging in the midst. So
Amen.
I'm excited about this Sunday. I'm excited about life groups. We have so many new people that are coming to the church. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're looking for friends and you're looking for family and you're looking to belong, then we want to encourage you to come on out and join us. We meet here at Living Stones 3 different times on Sunday, 8:30, 10 o'clock, and 11:30. We've got marriage ministry happening in the afternoon, which is a little tribe all by itself.
Yeah, that's another community. Yeah.
Another community. We have life groups, which is a great community. We have Celebrate Recovery. We've got so many different ministries. Each of those ministries is a tribe. We got people that love worship and production and music and sound and all that. That's a tribe. I mean, there's so many places. We have youth tribes. We have children's tribes. So many places that come together and to experience life in community, which is part of what the gospel is all about.
Yeah, amen.
And so, any final comments on this as we set ourselves up for the next episode?
Yeah, you don't want to miss next week.
And if you enjoy this, I encourage you, please like and share these episodes, because we really want to get the word out. We want to share the good news about the superiority of the Christian worldview and Jesus in general, and how his lordship brings life to everything that he touches. So, hey, how about this? What would be a practical thing you could leave somebody with based on what we talked about today? We live like such a polarized world. Yeah. So much anger, so much hostility. I mean, even being expressed in burning things up and destroying things and hurting one another, and just a lot of ugliness out there. So, if you're watching this podcast, what would you?
I would say think of a person who might there might be some difference between you and this person.
Yeah.
And when you see them next, or when you interact with this person next, focus on what are the commonalities. It might be the fact that you're both fathers, or you both have kids, or you both have an interest in something general. Just as general as you need to be. Focus on the commonality and talk about that instead of whatever divisive issue. Just try it. I'm not saying we shy away or compromise from our stance on the truth of the gospel. Right. However, just leading into it, focus on a commonality first and just see what happens.
Right, that's good. And I would just say this: why don't we focus intentionally on being kind this week? Because if you're
that'll help too.
If you're kind, you'll build kin.
Yeah.
And people that are kind are people that are never at a lack for friends.
Yeah.
And so the kinder we are and the more loving we are, the more relationships we're going to have, the more connections we're going to have, the more power to influence we're going to have.
That's good.
And that's what it's all about. So, Lord, just help us this week to be like you, to love, to serve, to reach out, to connect with people, and to be kind, so that we can build a great family of kin. Help us to find our tribe, and help your tribe, Lord, to continue to grow as we share the gospel and we share the good news with others. We pray this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Have an amazing week. We'll see you next week as we pick up part 2.